Hello and welcome to episode 88 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. This episode is sponsored by Sequel. I'm your host, Devon Dundee, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Sigmund Judge. Hey, Sigmund.
I've got a bit of a croaky voice this week. I'm not too sure what's going on, Devon. Lots happening, not just on Apple TV, but in our personal lives. We'll be getting into that a little bit later. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am energized. I've had my coffee, and I'm ready to talk some Apple TV with you. We've got a lot coming up on the show this week. We're going to recap Hijack. I'm going to try to keep my heart rate down as we talk about that. We're going to look at the future of 3D content, especially on Apple Vision Pro and the work that Apple's doing there. We're going to check in on the Hollywood strikes and their impact not only on Apple Originals, but also on the industry as a whole. But we're going to start with a really fun highlight on a new Apple Original series, Strange Planet. Welcome to a distant planet not unlike our own, with hilarious yet poignant observations on life, love, and friendship, told in the most peculiar way.
What if our world wasn't the only one where existence is absurd?
Please refer to the danger menu for tips on how not to die.
If your seat is in the peril row, you must help us take the machine apart. Your reward is more legroom.
One jitter liquid, please.
Would you like to jitter for 1, 2, or 5 hours?
Describe your current level of activity.
90% below average.
Give me that mild poison!
1, 2, 3.
I'll let you two talk while I go over here and pretend not to listen.
Irony. Is that irony?
I'm never sure.
This is the adventure we live for!
This animated series comes from creators Nathan W. Pyle and Dan Harmon and is based on a satirical webcomic started by Nathan and his wife in 2019. 6 months in, and the original pitch for the idea of a series came to Dan Harmon. It's now 2023 and it's obviously been a long work in progress, although I've got to say it surprised me that our first visit to Strange Planet via the webcomics only happened in 2019. It's amazing what a pandemic can do in terms of time. Before we talk about the show, the voice acting and Dan Harmon, let's talk about the original webcomic. What do you think made it stick out and how would you describe it?
The first thing I think of when I think of Strange Planet is the color scheme. You've got these blue, very simplified alien-looking creatures on like a pink background. It's very distinct. And I think, honestly, that's what made it stick out to me when I first came across the webcomic back in 2019. But what really made it stick with me and why I followed the account on Instagram, I don't follow a lot of comics on Instagram, but that one I do because I want to read each one. They're just these really hilarious portrayals of things that we do in our everyday lives but don't really think about. And because they're being done by these aliens who take everything very literally and even use very literal language to describe the things that they're doing, it just kind of makes fun of some of the weird human habits that we have, like why we keep cats in our house despite the fact that they treat us so badly, or just the way we interact in human relationships. It's just really funny the way that the comic can point out these things that we do without thinking about them and remind us, hey, this is kind of silly. It's kind of absurd the way that we live our lives sometimes.
I want to point out some fun examples. In fact, that example from Nathan W. Pyle as his favourite of his webcomic strips. And that is entitled Steer Close Window. And it's of someone going up to a drive-through and one of the characters saying to the other in the car, "Whisper your choices to me so that I can tell them." And then the server saying, "Hello, we do not trust you. Please give us the currency first." Followed by the customer saying, "We will inspect this sack as we also do not trust you." And both of them basically acknowledging, going, fair. And this is what I love, is the idea that everyone says what they feel, which is something that a lot of the time is really kind of lacking for people on this planet, not the Strange Planet, although I've got to say the similarities between Strange Planet and Earth, there are plenty of them. Dan Harmon is a really interesting collaborator on this. For those that may know the name but can't necessarily pinpoint, other shows and productions that he's been involved in. Give us a little bit of a background on him.
Well, I know Dan Harmon from his work on Community. He created that show back on NBC several years ago. One of my favorite series of all time. It's technically a sitcom, but it breaks a lot of the tropes, and it's got a really sharp humor that I very much enjoy, starring Joel McHale. Great series if you haven't checked that one out. He also co-created Rick and Morty, which is an animated series on, I think, Adult Swim, at least here in the U.S. I'm not personally familiar with it. I've heard really good things about it, that people enjoy it. So he's got a background not only in the animated world, but also just in comedy in general that I think really lends himself towards this project.
Yeah, and what I'd say about Strange Planet, which we're going to get into now, is it's absurd, but on a different level to Rick and Morty. A lot more subtle, and much like the projects that we've just mentioned from Dan Harmon, the casting of Strange Planet is on par, and I think definitely fits with this.
Most definitely. The series stars Tunde Adebimpe, Demi Adejuyigbe, Hannah Einbinder, Danny Pudi, and Lori Tan Chin.
When I read the webcomic, the one voice that I almost read this in was Danny Pudi. So amazing casting on that side of things. I don't know if you had a similar kind of response when you saw his name attached.
It really just makes sense. It's the kind of project that you could imagine him doing. And it's another instance of an actor on Apple TV Plus being involved in multiple projects, because we've seen him on Mythic Quest as well. Now, in addition to the voice acting, I really enjoyed the original music in the series. I wasn't expecting each episode to have like an original song, but at least so far, as many as I've seen, each one has some kind of musical element to it, which of course you don't get in the comic. I think that's a really cool addition to the world. And I really liked the theme song, especially. It's a great intro to the series. It almost reminds me of like the Big Bang Theory theme song, the way it starts slow and then it gets more frantic as it goes. I think as I keep watching, I'm going to be singing along to it as I pick up on the words. I will say, starting off this series, the first episode I don't think is really representative of the rest of the show. I was curious, just how they were going to adapt that webcomic into a 20-minute series. The first episode, it doesn't really follow one storyline. It follows these multiple people throughout these different storylines that intersect. There's a band, there's a flight attendant, who I think is referred to as like a comfort supervisor or something like that. And so they tie the story all together, but it's kind of segmented in its plot. Whereas watching like the second and third episodes, they're a little more cohesive. There's more of a narrative kind of flow to them. So I would just say when you watch this one, give it a chance, stick with it for a couple episodes to really get a feel for it. The humor's definitely there. There's a lot of those little terms from the webcomic that get thrown in there that, again, just point out the absurdity of some of the things we do. What is it? Group move machine for a bus, I think is what it's called, which is very funny. I enjoyed the first few episodes. It was funny the way I was expecting it to. I really enjoyed that musical element. I thought that was a nice addition, and I'd recommend people check it out.
I agree wholeheartedly on everything you said. I think there's enough to engage young audiences, but it will be the adults that will likely be awarded the most for watching. And for fans of the webcomic, the planet has so much to explore, and there's still that air of mystery in this adaptation, I'd call it an expansion, that made Strange Planet so fun to visit in the first place. Highly, highly recommend checking this out. On a weekly, I think this is going to be great fun. And Strange Planet's first 3 of 10 episodes will become available this Wednesday, August 9th, across all of your screens on Apple TV+. Of course, there's a lot going on narratively with Strange Planet. I just want to quickly note, a couple people got in touch this week saying, spoilers for last week's The Beanie Bubble. We may have gone a little bit too in-depth, so apologies for last week if you felt we verged on spoiler territory there. In terms of animation, though, we've got more to look forward to in the coming weeks. We got a trailer this week.
Yes, this week we saw the trailer for an upcoming Peanuts special. Snoopy presents One of a Kind Marcy, coming on August 18th. This is one that I'm very much looking forward to. I've always been a fan of the character of Marcy in Peanuts, and I've always felt like we don't get quite enough of her in some of the specials. And so having one that really centers on her, I think, is going to be really nice. And what's great about this one, I think, is that this is really a celebration of the introverts, the people in the background who are wanting to help but don't necessarily want to be the center of attention, which is something I definitely resonate with.
I think we all put our hands up on that.
But just judging from the trailer alone, I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, it's going to have, Snoopy and the gang and all those kind of gags and jokes there. It looks like there's going to be a golfing element, which, they always like to throw sports in with the Peanut specials. But yeah, I'm just happy to see Marcy get her time in the spotlight, even though she might shy away from it.
Another character that should be getting a spotlight in the near future on Apple TV is Isaac of Binding of Isaac. Tyrone Rodriguez, the executive producer of the popular top-down dungeon crawler game, said that the game will be coming to Apple TV in the near future. No date was given, but it's great to hear more games coming to the platform's App Store offerings, not just Apple Arcade. This is a game that I have actually played a fair bit of on different platforms, clocking hundreds of hours. So really, really happy to see this coming to Apple TV as well. And talking of Apple TV, we've got a couple of tidbits of news from this past week. The first being that Prime Video now finally is integrated for TV app users in Ireland. And for those that like to check out Apple Originals and their purchase libraries in the TV app on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5's next update will include Dolby Atmos support, but no Dolby Vision or 8K support yet. Yes, 8K, something that was on the box for PlayStation 5 users and hasn't yet rolled out. Downscaling a little bit. Let's go back to today and 4K. Because one of the massive advantages for the TV app and library purchases are those 4K upgrades that were introduced way back when and are still valid today. And each month we get upgrades to our library purchases. And I thought from this month on, we're going to give a rundown of upgrades that we can expect to our purchases through the TV app. This week, we had East of Eden and Rio Bravo upgraded to 4K alongside Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is a classic, and the sequel to Kick-Ass, Kick-Ass 2, with, of course, Jim Carrey. So, really, really cool to see.
Coming later this month on August 8th, we'll have an upgrade to Enter the Dragon. August 22nd, we'll see upgrades for Elizabeth, The Legend of Zorro, and The Nightmare Before Christmas. Can't wait to see that one in 4K. That'll be amazing. And then on August 29th, I know a lot of people will be excited to see Battlestar Galactica upgraded to 4K in their collections.
Now, when we say Battlestar Galactica, we mean the film, not the TV series, unfortunately, because there is still no news yet on TV shows appearing in 4K for purchase in 2023 on the TV app. We have, of course, seen these purchases become available through Amazon Prime Video, Vudu, amongst others. So the TV app, slightly behind on that, but it looks like we're going to jump ahead when next year's Apple Vision Pro is released. As discovered by Steve Moser in Vision Pro OS Developer Beta 2, the TV app contains a direction to play 3D. Now, my question to you, Devon, is what will Apple's 3D rollout look like? And do you think we'll see purchase options, or will 3D be tied specifically to service revenue and streaming services?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because the fact that the Play 3D button is in the TV app could be indicative of either, right? That could be your purchases in your library, that could be an Apple original on Apple TV Plus, or it could be something in Apple TV channels that could be added to those services as well. I think we'll probably see a combination of all those different things. I have to imagine that, Disney's going to be there day one, as they've said. I have to imagine there has to be some kind of 3D content there. Of course, they produce a lot of their movies in 3D for theaters. If they could easily put that format into their Disney Plus app for Vision OS and allow people to play 3D movies there, I think that'd be awesome. Now, the question of whether or not that'll be included with your current Disney Plus subscription, or is that going to be a higher tier? Maybe an opportunity to raise the price. We don't know that for sure. On the purchases side, I have to imagine there'll be some kind of integration in the store. But my question is that going to be an included upgrade like the 4K upgrades have been, where Apple makes the deal with the movie studios where if you've already purchased the film, you automatically get that version for free? Or is this going to be a paid option where you have to buy this title separately, maybe in a special section of the store, and maybe even have like a different section of your library for those 3D titles that obviously you can't play on your Apple TV and your iPhone and iPad? So I don't know for sure which direction they'll go there. I could see them pitching it to the studios as a way to make some more money on on-demand purchases. But I also probably would have said the same thing before they went 4K on the TV app too. And Apple was very generous with that. And it's still astounding to me that they were able to get that done. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see them do it again. It'd be a really happy surprise, but I don't know for sure. Do you have thoughts on this?
I do. I feel like as an avid purchaser, honestly, the kids sale this week for kids and family movies, dangerous time to be on the TV store. I think it's something Apple would like to do. I wonder how their partners will act on that. And I think that is a reason why 4K TV shows have been delayed, because there is that mixed messaging, right? Free 4K upgrades for movies, but obviously the TV studios aren't too keen on free 4K upgrades for TV shows. So I think that's where Apple are in a bit of a bind. What I do know, though, is that when 3D does come, the future is bright, because we got some news with regard to a new alliance called OpenUSD, and that combines partners Apple, Pixar, Adobe, Autodesk, and NVIDIA in an effort to standardize the 3D ecosystem by advancing the capabilities of open universal scene description. And in a statement, the alliance said, created by Pixar Animated Studios, OpenUSD is a high-performance 3D scene description technology that offers robust interoperability across tools, data, and workflows, already known for its ability to collaboratively capture artistic expression and streamline cinematic content production. OpenUSD's power and flexibility make it an ideal content platform to embrace the needs of new industries and applications. Lots of technical jargon there, but what I think it's saying is everyone is on the same page, probably for the first time, really. Because if we remember the 3D rollouts with previous technology, we always had competition there between like real 3D, and then there were these glasses that you would put on that would have a shutter system, and there was just so much going on there that it was really difficult, I think, to standardize and make something that was going to work for everyone. What I think is most interesting on this was the quote that we got from Mike Rockwell this week, who called OpenUSD an essential technology for the groundbreaking Vision OS platform. Something that we are both looking forward to. I know last week you mentioned that, hey, I didn't get new headphones because I'm slowly saving towards something else possibly in the future. I don't know if that is the new arrival that we're going to talk about or a new arrival from Apple, but I know you're very, very excited for Vision OS, especially after what we heard from Tim Cook this week.
Yes, on Apple's investor relations call this past week, Tim Cook mentioned that he uses Vision OS every single day, which I thought was a really cool little fact to learn about Tim Cook and his workflow. And hopefully we'll get to a point where you and I can say the same thing before too long, right?
Absolutely. Back to 3D for a second. Obviously, 3D hasn't really taken off in the home before. What do you think will differentiate this new rollout and thus make this rollout potentially successful in comparison to what we had? And I feel like it's not even that long ago, beginning in 2009 with the debut of Avatar from James Cameron.
I've actually never experienced 3D in the home. I've done it at the theaters a couple of times, But to be honest, I think the big impediment to that is the glasses themselves. You have to wear these specialized glasses on your face to be able to experience the film in 3D. And that's just not something a lot of people are willing to do at home, I think. So the big difference here is that Apple Vision Pro is going to be something people actually want to wear, something they're already wearing to, do their work and play games and things like that. So there's not going to be that big roadblock, I think. It's going to be something you're already doing. And so you can just go ahead and watch your TV show or film in 3D as well. I think also the experience is just going to be so much better than anything that's been available in the home before. 3D TVs, I think it's great technology. I think it's cool that it's available. But I think this experience with it being such a high quality display that you're already wearing, I think it's just going to be a next level experience. It's really going to be so much more immersive than we've been able to get in the past. And in addition to that, you can also take yourself to a totally different space, right? You can remove yourself from your living room. So you're not even watching the film at home. You're in a giant movie theater or at a lake or wherever it is you want to be. So I think that immersion is really going to make a big difference as well.
I think a big key difference here also is going to be that fatigue that you get through wearing glasses. And for some, I think the issue with VR as opposed to spatial computing has been motion sickness, that kind of thing. We've heard this week that there's some technology behind the foundations of what Vision OS is built on that tackles motion sickness. I think that's going to be really, really interesting, especially I think for those that we've seen a demo of it is what Apple would like us to do, view films and TV shows and especially Apple originals on planes. Something I definitely want to have ready next time I'm on my way to Cupertino, hopefully next year with yourself in tow. I may even ride with Air Canada this time if there's an option.
Well, you might have to. You don't have to wait until next year to watch Apple Originals while flying Air Canada because they've teamed up with Apple TV Plus to offer several Apple Originals as free in-flight entertainment, including Ted Lasso, Bad Sisters, Severance, and Foundation. So next time you find yourself flying Air Canada, you can catch up on your favorite Apple Original free in flight.
Interestingly, no inclusion of Hijack. Now, we've talked about vinyl the last couple of episodes, and I'm about to again. Marcelo Zarvov's Emancipation soundtrack is the latest to get a physical release through Lakeshore Records. The 22-track double metallic silver vinyl release is expected to hit record stores on September 22nd. And I'll tell you now, I have put that alongside my order of the Causeway soundtrack, which is also releasing through Lakeshore the same month. Really, really excited by that announcement, but an announcement neither of us are particularly excited about. A bit of a sad announcement now. Both Suspicion and City on Fire will not return for a second season on Apple TV+. I'm not too sure if this was a massive surprise for both of us. There has been recently a number of non-renewals being reported, obviously a bit slow on the news front with regard to the production strikes and everything else, which we'll be getting into in a moment. Suspicion was through Cassette, I think, which is part of ITV over here in the UK. Wasn't surprised because I felt like the story ended quite well, but I think you're a bit gutted on the City on Fire non-renewal.
Well, I definitely enjoyed City on Fire a lot, but I honestly wasn't sure at the end of season 1 if we were going to be getting a season 2. I think they left it in a place that they could have continued the story, but for the most part, they tied things up really well, minus that one storyline that I kind of complained about during our recap, but I'm willing to let that go. City on Fire was based on a book, and as far as I can tell, they covered the book pretty thoroughly. So, yeah, I'm happy with it. I don't think that either of these non-renewals should discourage people from checking these out if they haven't, because they are both pretty good stories that wrap up well. It's not like they're going to land on a cliffhanger and leave you hanging, which I appreciate. Yeah, not terribly surprised, but at least we don't have to wait and wonder if these shows are coming back. We have official announcement that they won't be.
Yeah, both complete stories available on the Originals tab within the TV app. And they're going to be joined, I think, pretty soon by a couple of other originals, returning originals. And we got news about those this week.
That's right. Tehran star Niv Sultan revealed on Instagram that filming for season 3 of the show has wrapped. We mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that Tehran got an exception from the Screen Actors Guild to finish production, and so they were able to get that over the finish line and enter post-production, so maybe we won't have to wait too long to see season 3 of Tehran. And one that I know we're both expecting to come really soon is For All Mankind season 4, which we found out this week has entered sound mixing at Universal Studios. I think we could see this one, I don't even know, maybe before the year ends?
Oh yeah, I think so. Q4 is when I expect to see For All Mankind. I think it's going to be a nice closeout to the year, maybe alongside Acapulco for that light relief. Really, really excited for the return of both. Another production that I'm really, really excited for coming in Q4 is, of course, the Apple original epic film from Ridley Scott, Napoleon. We got some coverage from a world-exclusive Empire article out in the August issue, available on newsstands and through Apple News Plus. Some really interesting tidbits here. So, Napoleon, whilst the film is nearly 3 hours long, Ridley Scott confirmed that there's a fantastic 4.5 hour cut of the film in existence, which he hopes Apple will bring to the public at some point. I'm going to say it now, Devon. I would love to see this released or re-release of this when Vision Pro comes to customers. I think that could be a really, really cool experience. And on the making of Napoleon, despite working with Joaquin Phoenix on Gladiator 23 years ago, honestly, where does the time go? With the sequel recently shooting in Morocco, it was Joaquin Phoenix's performance in Todd Phillips' Joker, which was released shortly before Scott began putting together Napoleon, that brought Joaquin Phoenix in. He said, "I'm staring at Joaquin and I'm saying, this little demon is Napoleon Bonaparte. He looks like him." So it's going to be interesting actually to see that maybe as a double bill for those that love Joaquin Phoenix and that side of things. Really, really just excited for Napoleon. There's actually a density of information available in the latest episode of Empire magazine. Again, available on Apple News Plus. And I'm really, really jealous of anyone that is a subscriber to the physical magazine, because they get a subscriber special cover, which we'll link an image to in the show notes. It's absolutely beautiful.
Well, from Empire Magazine to Hello Magazine, they shared a few details about the upcoming Apple Original series starring Noel Fielding as legendary British highwayman Dick Turpin. The show will allegedly be called The Completely Made-Up Adventures of Dick Turpin and feature Downton Abbey star Hugh Bonneville as corrupt lawman Jonathan Wild.
Given we got the first look, I expect we'll see the completely made-up adventures of Dick Turpin race its way to the TV app and the Originals tab in no time at all. But we have some news on a production that has halted. We talked about this last week, but we have just a little bit more information on what's going on with Brad Pitt's F1 film and a name for the film.
That's right. A source speaking to The Sun this week said that Brad has agreed that they would finish shoots booked in, but has postponed planned production over the next 2 months. The cast and crew of Apex, which is apparently what the film is going to be called, have been filming in Budapest, but Brad has called for the future dates to be put back in solidarity with everyone striking. Postponing the production was a massive call, especially financially, but Brad has listened to the concerns of the people he works with and wants to show his support. From what we're hearing, the next planned dates for shooting are in Las Vegas in November, by which time everyone involved is hoping for a resolution of the current impasse between writers, actors, and the studios.
And that news leads to a bit of an update with regard to the strikes between SAG, the WGA, and the AMPTP. WGA revealed earlier this week that it had been invited to meet with the AMPTP later on Friday, the day we're recording. The meeting is apparently intended as a chance to discuss a resumption of negotiations rather than as a negotiation session itself, but the plan has offered the first hope of progress towards a resolution of the work stoppage. As of today, Devon, the WGA has been on strike for 94 days, and Actors Union SAG-AFTRA for 22 days in the first stoppage by both groups since 1980. And in a message to members, the WGA accused the AMPTP this week of having employed a tired anti-union playbook straight out of the 2007-2008 strike. Now, 2 unions are on strike and the industry is 3 months into a shutdown that is causing delay after delay to TV and movies. It is obviously past time for the companies to get a new playbook, one that recognises the legitimate issues that cause these strikes and takes steps to address them. That was what the WGA had to say. The Guild blamed the employers for providing calculated disinformation about the real impact of the ongoing strikes and of using the suffering of other workers and businesses to pressure us to settle. The AMPTP had this to say in reply, simply that Friday's meeting is to determine whether we have a willing bargaining partner. This all sounds a bit negative, but the exchange of strongly worded statements tempers the hopes that Friday's meeting might lead to a breakthrough in the labour strife. Even if studios and writers begin talking again in earnest, that could still leave studios and actors in a stalemate. One thing I would say, Devon, is there is a lot that has been agreed upon between the WGA and AMPTP so far, but the sticking point still is on residuals between the WGA, SAG-AFTRA and the AMPTP. One thing that I thought was really, really interesting was the percentage that they were talking about, and the fact that actually the producers of these shows and films, who obviously in their creative endeavours do take a risk on the financing of these shows and films that we see, actually don't get the 3% that the WGA and SAG-AFTRA are bargaining for. They don't get that themselves. So it's very, very interesting to see what the dynamics are, and we will, of course, be following this as it goes on. I'm hopeful, though, eventually we will find some kind of resolution, and hopefully it's not going to take until the beginning of 2024 for us to see that. After the news broke earlier this week of the Guild Alliance meeting, SAG-AFTRA National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator Duncan Crabtree Ireland told the trade press that his union has not heard from AMTP since the actors' talks broke down on July 12th. He says, "We are ready, willing and able to return to the table at any time." And I gotta say, I think that is yet another positive in this ongoing drama. That said, with all of this happening, it is going to have an effect, not just on movies and TV shows, which we're going to get into in a moment, but also award shows.
That's right. This week we got news that the Emmy Award ceremony has been delayed, with vendors for the event being told it will not air on September 18th as planned, due to the ongoing strikes in Hollywood and across the United States. Variety reports that the ceremony could take place in January of 2024. No official announcement on that as of yet, but we'll keep an eye on it, and hopefully we can get these Emmy Awards going as early as possible, because of course that's a really fun time for us and for everyone who loves television and loves to celebrate the work that these people do.
And it's going to be a really, really interesting position, I think, January 2024, because it will be right in the lead up to the Academy Awards, which will take place a few months afterwards, and what we always see as the beginning to award season traditionally, Golden Globes, which almost celebrate films that we are yet to see alongside films that we have. And so you're going to have the Emmys in there celebrating television shows from the year previous. So it's going to be an interesting time. Now, in terms of delays and further impact to the industry, expected for both films and TV shows in production, and anticipated theatrical and streaming releases as the strikes carry on. One that we know of is Dune Part 2, which has been rumoured to have moved from its expected November theatrical release, although the head executive of IMAX this week mentioned that they are ready and have been prepared for a November release across their IMAX screens. I think there may be a bit of a tussle between IMAX and Warner Brothers in that case. We'll have to wait and see. Otherwise, Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse may be delayed until 2025 as voice work has yet to begin on what was already a tight turnaround for the follow-up to this summer's animated superhero hit. Avatar 3 will now release in 2025, alongside Avatar 4 in 2029 and Avatar 5 in 2031. Two unnamed Star Wars movies will be pushed back to 2026, with The Mandalorian pushed back and unlikely to debut until Q4 of 2024 at the earliest, whilst Deadpool 3 has been pushed forward from November 2024 to May next year. Other shows and movies delayed include Season 2 of The Last of Us, the new Blade film starring Swan Song's Mahershala Ali, which was supposed to begin production in June, Matt Reeves' anticipated follow-up to The Batman Part 2, which is expected to start filming in March of next year, alongside the Safdie brothers' new comedy starring Adam Sandler, which has also been pushed back. I actually had no idea of this. We mentioned Uncut Gems last week by the Safdie brothers and starring Adam Sandler. It's going to be really interesting to see them at the helm of a comedy with Adam Sandler this time around. Production has been paused on My Ex-Friend's Wedding, the new Amanda Seyfried comedy movie, due to the ongoing writers' strike. Of course, you can check her out in The Crowded Room. Production on Mission Impossible 8 has been temporarily shut down, alongside stand-up comedian Aziz Ansari's feature directorial debut, which will have to wait as Good Fortune is on halt. And lastly, production of Unstoppable, starring Jennifer Lopez, has not lived up to his name, as that has also halted production. So lots and lots to look forward to. And of course, you can check out all of these titles and start pre-adding them to this week's episode sponsor of Magic Rays of Light, Sequel, the ultimate media tracking app. Lots included the last couple of weeks, and further improvements from developer and friend of the show, Roman, who just so happened to buy his first podcasting mic this week. More on that in the coming weeks, I think. Roman has updated Sequel with support for more streaming services, and I'm really excited for the future with tracked support currently in testing and so much more, including cast, crew and extras. Devon, genuinely, I think this is my favourite app, and way before Sequel and Sequel Plus became a sponsor of this very podcast. I think you agree.
Oh, completely agree. I'm so happy that Sequel's sponsoring the show, and it's an app that I use every single day. Of course, you can download Sequel for free on the App Store and use it to track movies, TV shows, books, audiobooks, and games. But if you're looking for even more, you can subscribe to Sequel Plus, which has a bunch of additional features, including a Where to Watch feature to tell you where you can stream your favorite shows and films, release reminders for upcoming releases so you can keep up with each new episode and film as they come out, a bunch of great widgets, including my favorite, the upcoming widget, which I keep on my home screen all the time, a time to beat feature for video games so you can know what you're getting yourself into before you pick up that game, how long you're going to be playing, some really nice alternative app icons. I don't know if you dug into these, Sigmund, but there's some really fun ones.
I have not.
I love the Toy Story themed one. It's just so cool. There's really great ones. And of course, you'll be supporting development of this wonderful app as it continues to grow. You mentioned a couple of features that are coming before too long to Sequel, and we love to see it continue to develop. Now, pricing-wise, Sequel Plus costs $2.99 a month, $19.99 a year, or $99.99 for a lifetime subscription for an individual. And there's also a really great family sharing option for $4.99 a month, $34.99 a year, or $174.99 for a lifetime subscription. Sequel Plus is a really great value if you're serious about tracking your TV shows, films, games, books, and audiobooks. It really is worth the investment. Sequel Plus also offers a free 2-week trial so you can give it a try before committing to the subscription. Our thanks to Sequel for sponsoring this episode of Magic Rays of Light.
On to releases for Apple TV, and I think we need to dig into the releases for August on Apple Arcade. I love this new rollout of learning what we get to play throughout the month at the very beginning of the month. Each month's lineup just seems to far exceed the month before.
Yeah, Apple Arcade is not pulling any punches in the month of August. Starting on August 11th with Necograms Plus. It's a cat puzzle game from Hungry Sky. This looks very cozy and fun. I love the artwork on this one. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. August 11th, we've got Kingdoms Merge and Build, which is a Merge 2 kingdom building game from Cherry Pick Games. Then coming August 25th is Finity, a sliding tile match 3 puzzle game from Seba. Just looking at the screenshots from this one is calming to me. I think this is one that's going to help me get into a Zen mode, which I very much appreciate. And then August 29th, a really exciting release, Samba de Amigo Party to Go. This is a rhythm-based maraca game from Sega featuring music from Lady Gaga, Psy, and more. I don't know about you, Sigmund. I am a sucker for rhythm-based games. I was obsessed with Guitar Hero and Rock Band and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very much looking forward to this one coming to Apple Arcade. I guess Samba de Amigo was on the Sega like back in the day, and now they're bringing it back on Apple Arcade, which is very, very cool.
You know, the one thing I always think of when I see these kind of games, there's this one phrase that comes to mind, and that is Mega Ninja. Of course, for you Scott Pilgrim fans out there.
Let's talk about podcasts coming up this week. On Friday, we've got, of course, Foundation, the official podcast, an incredible companion to a great show on Apple TV+. Actually, I get so excited. As soon as the episodes of the podcast come out, I'm on top of them. I love to hear from David Escoyer and Jason Concepcion and the guests that they get. Really, really great podcast. On Monday, we've got Undercover of Night. And then Wednesday, of course, we've got After the Whistle, keeping up with the Women's World Cup and all the exciting things happening there.
Yeah. One thing that we discussed earlier this week, actually, is Undercover of Night and how we didn't know how many episodes there were. And this has been an ongoing joke when we've been putting the show notes together. Reality is, it looks like the makers don't know either because it's an ongoing thing. We're hearing calls for evidence and theories from listeners. So it's definitely become more of an interactive podcast as well, which I think is really, really interesting, and really, really interested to see where this mystery goes in the coming weeks and months, maybe. Really, really cool to see, Devon.
Definitely, and it's actually a really touching podcast too if you haven't given it a chance. As they're discovering more about this woman's life, it's just really cool to see what they're uncovering, and I'm enjoying the ride for as long as it lasts. Another ride that I'm enjoying for as long as it lasts this season for my Toronto Blue Jays is, of course, the MLB season. Friday Night Baseball this week, though, sees Tampa Bay Rays at Detroit Tigers, followed by Houston Astros at the New York Yankees. We also have another round of games for the Leagues Cup with Cincinnati versus Nashville and Chicago versus America. My two standout games this weekend. Of course, midweek we saw yet another game from Messi, which brought with it another goal, having a lot of fun there on the pitch, and it's been an absolute joy and a lot of fun to watch as well. So highly, highly recommend checking out MLS Season Pass as we do every week on Magic Rays of Light. In terms of Apple Originals and the Original tab, on Friday we have the debut of some new Ava the Owlet shorts, alongside a new episode of Foundation and the penultimate episode of Season 2 of Swagger, which has a shorter season this time around. And on Wednesday, we see the premiere of our highlight, Strange Planet, alongside new episodes of Physical and The After Party. Great second season so far, delving into lots of different film genres, and a couple of huge surprises this past week. Of course, we round up this week's releases with extras, David S. Goyer's Reddit,
Ask Me Anything. There for you to read and peruse. Lots of interesting little tidbits there and lots of knowledge to soak up for you Foundation fans out there. Alongside a new TV app editorial celebrating South Asian stars and stories from the South Asian community. The editorial team on the TV app once again outdoing themselves. This week, though, has seen the finale to a series that has got a lot of tongues wagging since its debut on Apple TV+, Hijack. When flight KA-29 is hijacked during its 7-hour journey from Dubai to London, Sam Nelson, an accomplished corporate negotiator, tries using his professional skills to save everyone on board. Will this high-risk strategy be his undoing? Well, as we all know, I watched this in full early on through our screeners on a flight to Heathrow, which made things extra entertaining and extra interesting. Was the high-risk strategy Sam Nelson's undoing, Devon? And how did you enjoy the series and its finale this past week?
Well, let me just say, I have never been more stressed watching a TV show in my life. This is the most stress-inducing series I've ever watched. And it's like addictive in that way. It gets your heart going, it really gets the adrenaline rushing, and you just have to find out what happens next, right? I think it was really effective as a weekly rollout, actually, because it just kept people talking about it each week. They really wanted to know what happened next. And I saw a lot of people who got really, really into this one. Of course, it stars and is executive produced by Idris Elba, who I think makes the perfect lead man for this show. He plays that character, Sam Nelson, who is trying to negotiate and navigate his way out of this terrible situation that he's found himself in, being on a hijacked plane. His character is smart, he's really cunning, and he's always trying to stay one step ahead of everything that's going on, which makes him both intimidating and someone that you want to trust. So you never fully know what's going on inside his head. And he says multiple times, all I care about is getting home. And I really do think that's his motivation. He just wants to make sure he gets home safely. But what he does, the way he works the hijackers, the way he works the people around him, the way he tries to work the situation in his favor to get as many people back home safely as possible, I think is really impressive. And I don't know that anyone else could have pulled off that complexity and that intensity the way that Idris Elba did. He's just a compelling actor, in every right. He's someone that draws a crowd. I think he's part of the reason so many people gave this one a try. And then he just really kept everyone on the hook the whole time. I think he did a fantastic job. The show did something I thought was really great with their use of cliffhangers. It seemed like every episode ended with either some new information or, just something really shocking happening to keep you on the hook. But it didn't seem, cheap or, like showy or just trying to keep people watching. It really felt like it was a part of the story. You're watching this whole thing play out in real time. And so at the end of every episode that there's going to be some kind of big development to lead into the next one as these people on this flight are really just desperately trying to get home. Especially in the penultimate episode, the way that episode ended, I was just in complete and utter shock. Because you think one thing's happening, and you get a sense for the rhythm of the show that at the end of the episode there's going to be a twist, and I'm like, okay, what's the twist going to be? And honestly, part of me thought that the big twist might be that Sam turned on his fellow passengers and did something crazy. I don't know, like maybe we found out that he was secretly in on it or something. I don't know. But the twist that they gave us was even wilder than I could have even imagined. It took everyone by surprise, including the hijackers themselves, which is just really astounding. And I just needed a minute after watching that episode. I just had to take a minute to calm down because it really was. I was just so enthralled by it, and my heart was just racing. I think if there is a weak point to this series, which I think it was just really strong, if I had to say there was one weakness, maybe it's the villains being a little bit over the top. You've got these hijackers, they're walking up and down the plane, they're yelling, they're hitting people, they're being really intense, right? Because the show wants you to know these are the bad guys. But really, I believed Neil Maskell, who played Stuart, the leader of the hijackers, as someone who at the end of the day was absolutely desperate and just way in over his head. These are not professional hijackers, right? These are not people who have done this before. You learn more about this group of people and who they work for and the leverage that their bosses have over them and why they're doing what they're doing. It actually makes you somewhat sympathetic for them and why they're doing it. Of course, we don't condone hijacking and putting all these people's lives at risk, but it's a series that I think does flesh out the villains in a way that sometimes we don't necessarily get. And even though, again, they are a little bit maybe overly showy, I think part of that might just be compensating for how scared they are. And this whole situation just being a really intense and scary thing for everyone involved.
Yeah, I love the energy that you've given in this recap because it really mirrored the energy that I felt every week watching this, because I rewatched the series as it rolled out every Wednesday, and I watched with friends via SharePlay and saw their reactions. It was so much fun, especially, I've got to say, the very end of this series, which I felt like was a real callback to 90s and 80s action films. Almost felt Beverly Hills Copy at the end there. So highly, highly recommend Hijack. You can check out the whole series, available now across all of your screens on Apple TV+. Quick question. Do we see the return of Sam Nelson to Apple TV+ screens? Because I think judging by the first season of Hijack, Apple would be absolutely crazy not to have Idris Elba back on the TV app, and I think at haste.
I think we definitely need to see him back on Apple TV+. I don't necessarily know about his character Sam Nelson. I mean, what are they going to do second season? He's on a train that gets hijacked and he has to, negotiate his way out of that?
I'll take it.
I don't know. But yeah, I would love to see him continue to work with Apple TV+. Of course, his overall deal with the service has expired, but I think that the success of this series will hopefully spur them on to work together again in the future.
So lots and lots to catch up on and look forward to. But we end our episodes, as we do every week, with our Up Next picks from the TV app. And we start with not just one, but two Up Next picks from you this week, Devon.
That's right. I've got a couple picks this week. I'm going to start with something that I love, Sigmund, a throwback. A little bit of nostalgia, going back to my childhood. I've started a rewatch of the 80s and 90s sitcom Full House, which a lot of people are hopefully familiar with. It stars Bob Saget as a father of the Tanner family who loses his wife, and his two best friends, Jesse, played by John Stamos, and Joey, played by Dave Coulier, move in to help him raise his three daughters. This is like a classic show for me, one that really takes me back to my childhood, and I've really loved revisiting it so far. And the reason I'm revisiting it is because of a couple of rewatch podcasts that have recently started up. There's How Rude Tanneritos, which is hosted by Andrea Barber and Jodie Sweetin, who played Kimmy Gibbler and Stephanie Tanner on the series, and it's really cool to go back with them. And also Full House Rewind, hosted by Dave Coulier. These podcasts started the same week, so I'm hoping to do the rewatch with them and kind of get two different cast and creator perspectives on the series. I love these rewatch podcasts. I love that this trend is a thing, and I'm really happy to be watching Full House along with the cast and crew, so I invite you to join me. My other pick this week is much more recent, and that is the return of Only Murders in the Building, which is coming back on Hulu next week here in the U.S. and on Disney Plus internationally. This one is one of my favorite shows from Hulu out of the past few years. It stars Selena Gomez, Martin Short, and Steve Martin as three true crime podcast junkies who decide to start investigating murders themselves and end up getting themselves into a lot of trouble along the way. This season also features Paul Rudd and Meryl Streep. Another couple of great actors to throw in the mix. This show, it's like complete chaos on a lot of levels, but with these comedy legends, it's just a hilarious ride. So I really enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to getting back into that world with season 3 when it debuts next week.
I cannot wait, Devon. One of my favorite shows on television that isn't an Apple original. But my pick this week is for a feature film that I saw in the cinema. I think we talked about it. I, at the time, had a bit of a ear infection and therefore experienced it with my AirPods Max in like an enhanced audio mode, and that is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is available from Tuesday in the TV app for purchase. I gotta be honest, other than Everything Everywhere All at Once, the whole multiverse idea is something that I haven't really gelled with, in all honesty. Not even Spider-Man No Way Home, which I know is a controversial take, but I'm full of them this week, Devon. This, however, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is just so well done. So many different types of animation layered upon one another. So many fun Easter eggs and in-jokes. And just an overall amazing message about responsibility of being Spider-Man. Really being able to be fit, each and every one of us. Which I think is really powerful on so many different fronts. A great family film. Highly, highly recommend it. And of course you have Into the Spider-Verse from a couple of years ago as well. From, of course, Chris Miller and Phil Lord, who are also at the helm of Apple Original The After Party, currently airing its episodes each and every Wednesday. So, those are our picks this week for the TV app. But to close this episode, we have a little bit of an announcement, both a happy and I guess a sad announcement, because I'm going to miss you, Devon, for a couple of months at least.
That's right. As we've discussed on the show before, my wife and I are expecting our first child to be due really any day now. And so with the baby on the way, I will be stepping away from my co-hosting duties for a short time. So if you don't hear from me for a little bit, that's why. I'm excited to step back and become a listener again and hear what you're going to be doing with the show as it continues to carry on without me, Sigmund. And don't worry, because I will be back before too long.
Yes, looking forward to our prediction game in the lead up to what we expect to be a September 13th Apple event. But we do have a range of guests that are going to be filling in as guest co-hosts. Excited to introduce some new guests, to some familiar voices and some returns. Of course, my fingers are well and truly crossed, and all my very best to both yourself and Catherine, everyone to be happy and healthy. And yeah, super, super excited for you, my friend. It's a big step.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. I appreciate all the support from everyone who has sent us well wishes since we've announced the news. And I will miss you too, Sigmund, and the listeners. And I look forward to getting back to podcasting with you just as soon as I can. And with that said, that is all for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, we always welcome your feedback, so be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a rating and review there. You can also contact us on social media via the links in the show notes, and you can email the show or send us an iMessage to mrolfm@screentimes.net.
We'll be back next time, so until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and...
Sigmund, I believe it's time to shake things up.